Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, literature, and popular culture. Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to another program. My name is Bruce Markusen, and as always, I'm joined by co-host and producer Tracy Asteria. Tracy, what's going on with you?
Well, we are celebrating Thanksgiving here in Canada this weekend, so it's a long weekend for me, and which is really great. Fall is in the air. It's actually really quite cold this weekend, but it's still beautiful and sunny. So happy Thanksgiving to anyone in Canada that's listening. How's everything with you?
Good. I was just mentioning to you, I just got back a moment ago from the Shocktober Fest event in Oneonta. Oneonta is becoming known as Horrorville, the independent horror film circuit. And I was talking to one of the people involved in film in Otsego County. His name is Greg Klein. Greg has helped get us some guests in the past, like Robert Michael Ryan, Kyle Carvin, some other folks that have been kind enough to join us. So Greg's very involved in the horror film industry, which is burgeoning in Oneonta, and he helps put on this Shocktoberfest event. They have fortune tellers, tarot card readers, they have special effects masters, merchandise, and they're also showing the film that we talked about a while ago, Popeye the Slayer Man. So that's one of the films being screened as we speak, as a matter of fact. So a fun weekend in Oneonta.
Oh, wow, that sounds so exciting. I'm jealous.
Yeah, we've had a lot of things going on. You know, we've had Scaricon in Syracuse, we've had Serling Fest in Binghamton,
Mhm.
and then this weekend, Shocktoberfest, the fourth annual in nearby Oneonta. Well,
Awesome.
on this program this week, we have a returning guest, Tracy, as you know, and he is a very fine author, Christopher Locke. Christopher has written nearly 30 books in several genres, including several volumes on horror history. His books include The Road to Dracula, from Gothic novel to horror classic. He's also written Frankenstein Meets Dracula, did a very good biography, Jack Pierce, Hollywood's makeup master, and has written Bride of Frankenstein, the definitive history of the horror classic. On this episode, Christopher will discuss his newest published book, The Invisible Man, the complete history of the 1933 horror classic. The book debuted in April of 2025, so we're glad to have Christopher back to talk about it. Christopher, welcome back to the Ghostly Gallery. How have you been?
I've been good. Tracy, Bruce, thanks so much for having me back. I I was up till past 1 this morning watching the Tigers get beaten by the Mariners. 15 innings that thing went, Bruce, you saw. So I was rooting for the Tigers, and they didn't make it, but they had a great season. So I'm all rested now, though. Thank you. So thanks for having me back.
Sure. I lasted 13 innings with the game. It was about midnight our time, and I had a long day today because I had to do some work for the Hall of Fame, and then I wanted to go to Shocktoberfest. I have this program, and then later this evening a ghost tour. So I couldn't stay up till all hours, but it was a classic last night. 15 innings. Game 5 of the division series. The right team didn't win. I was rooting for the Tigers, as I know you are, but a great season for Detroit nonetheless. So, Chris, your book on The Invisible Man is a rather detailed 438-page account of the making of the 1933 film, along with its source material, the classic novel written by H.G. Wells back in 1897. You delve into all sorts of aspects, looking at the cast members, looking at promotional efforts for the film, also many of the sequels and remakes and offshoots of The Invisible Man that have come out over the years. And when you talk about the original source material, the H.G. Wells book, some consider this the best book that Wells wrote, and he wrote many. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the book version of The Invisible Man. You a huge fan? Is this one of your favorites?
It is that and the War of the Worlds, of course. Those are my two favorites. Time Machine I would tie them as number 1. Time Machine maybe number 3. But I recall first buying it when I was a young teenager it was a book auction going on in junior high, I believe. And Invisible Man, yeah, I've never read it, so let's get it. And I thought it was important to include it in the book, but only because we have these Gothic classic novels, Frankenstein and Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Wells' The Invisible Man. And how many of us have actually read them? We love the movies. We love the films from the 30s and the 40s, the golden age of Hollywood. How many of us have actually read the book that inspired it? And I would say of the three, Shelley's Frankenstein, Stoker's Dracula, and H.G. Wells, this adaptation by Universal is probably the closest to any of the other movies and novels that had come out. And in fact, War of the Worlds, which came out in 1953, I think, and then there have been other films, of course, the Time Machine as well. I think this has been the closest adaptation to which was written by R.C. Sheriff, British writer, to Wells' novel. So I thought it was important to include it, but it's always been one of my favorites.
I read the book probably back in the late 70s, and I should reread it. Maybe I'll do that in the coming year, hopefully. I don't have a lot of memories of reading the book. I know it's a classic, and I know that it is, considered one of the great horror/science fiction books ever done. Just refresh my memory. Is it a particularly long book? Is it a quick read? Give us a little insight into Wells's writing style.
It is. It's a pretty quick read. It's a good read on the different phases that goes on with the character. And again, it is included in the book, so you don't have to go out and buy that separately. But I think it's a very quick and interesting read. What I liked doing is I went back and read it again first before I completed my book, is to go through it in your mind and try to compare it to the film adaptation, 1933. The differences, the similarities, where some of the names came from, what was made up in the movie that wasn't in the book. So it's kind of interesting to go through it. And as I did read the book, I visualized Claude Rains in his wrappings and all that in the novel as I'm reading his character going along. So it is a fun read, I think.
The film The Invisible Man debuted in October of 1933, some 92 years ago. It does star Claude Rains, great actor, as the title character. His name is Jack Griffin, a man who comes up with a formula for invisibility. The formula works in some ways, maybe works too well. It also has side effects, and it does make Griffin mentally deranged and incredibly violent, and progressively so as the film continued. As you talk about in the book, two of the absolute legends of horror were initially reported to be in line to play the title role. First, you had Bela Lugosi, then you had Boris Karloff. It ended up neither was in the film at all in any capacity. So what exactly happened there, Chris?
So let's take a step back to August of 1930 when Lon Chaney Sr. died. Of course, he had starred for Universal in The Hunchback of Notre Dame and the Phantom of the Opera, and they had been looking for a Chaney replacement ever since. You needed an individual who could act, show emotions. And remember, Chaney's was mostly pantomime. He only did one talkie film, The Unholy Three, which came out the year or the month before he died. So he had a lot of character in his face and his eyes and his hands gestures. And not only that, he was a true genius with makeup. Well, by around that time, the makeup artist union said, no, we're going to have our own people doing that now. You have to, you can't just apply your own makeup anymore. Lugosi got away with it for Dracula, much to the demise of Jack Pierce. So if we can't find an individual who can do makeup and that type of acting, let's get maybe 2 people. So that same year that Chaney passed, they made Jack Pierce head of makeup for Universal. They didn't want to lose him. So now we got to find the actor. So they gave the role of Dracula to Lugosi. For a while, they thought maybe this is our new Lon Chaney, but after Dracula, he did the makeup tests and the acting tests for Frankenstein. It was a disaster. He didn't want to start it anyways. He wasn't talking. His handsome face was going to be covered with makeup. So then James Whale found Karloff in the Universal lunchroom, said, boy, you have a very interesting face. And if you look at Karloff's face, it isn't all that different than Lon Chaney's. And of course, Karloff didn't talk. He's almost like in a silent film. He's using his eyes and his hands gestures and everything for the monster. And after it was premiered and released, it was such a hit that at the end of December, they offered Karloff a 5-year contract. They thought they found their new Lon Chaney. So from the end of December 1931 into April, May of 1933, Karloff was the lead for The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man was recommended to be the first film follow-up to Dracula. Not Frankenstein, but they didn't secure the rights from Wells until September of 31. And given the amount of time they knew it would take to produce it with the special effects and everything, they said, well, we don't have the time. So they focused on Frankenstein instead, and that's when they discovered Karloff. And so Karloff was in the running until May or June of 1933, but there's a lot of pre-production difficulties that went on from the time they secured the rights from Wells until they started shooting. And that was 2 years and a month it took of pre-production. They went through 12 screenplays. They went through 4 directors till they settled on, or Whale agreed to do it, and 7 actors, including Lugosi and Karloff, and William Powell, of all people, from the Thin Man series, was considered and almost in it. But in the beginning of 33, you've had a Universal shutdown for a few months trying to save some money. In the meantime, Karloff said, well, okay, I'm going to England. I'm going to perform in a British production called The Ghoul. When he got done with that, he stopped by the home of R.C. Sheriff, who had written the screenplay, the final screenplay for The Invisible Man, picked it up and brought it back to Universal. But by that time, he was out of it. He didn't want it. There was a salary dispute. And besides, considering Karloff's age, would have made a great love interest with Flora, with Gloria Stewart, actress. Yeah. Even though you don't see him until the last few seconds of the film, he would have made an interesting Invisible Man, as I think Lugosi would have, with their voices, unique voices.
Yeah.
But the fact that the Invisible Man is invisible, you don't see his face. It's not horrific. It's not like the Phantom of the Opera. What's horrific are the bandages and everything. The goggles. What Whale decided he needed wasn't necessarily a great actor looking or recognizable. He needed someone who could don the bandages and the costumes and give a performance based on his voice inflections and his movements and his body language. So that's what they were looking for. And Whale just happened to be in Universal, and the Universal lot, first week of June. He's next door to the projection room, and they are running a test screen of an actor by the name of Claude Rains. And it was for an RKO film, but they borrowed it just to see what the guy was like. It was even Rains said, I was all over the place. It was just a terrible audition. But Whale didn't see who it was. He just heard that voice, that gravelly, baritone, smooth voice, liquidy voice of Claude Rains. Very unique. And he said, that's the guy I want. And he told Universal, I don't care what he looks like. That's who I want. I want that voice. So they called Rains, who was living in Pennsylvania at the time, had him come out and audition. And he auditioned with the speech about to Flora while he's going through his mad descent. Don't you see what it means? Power to rule, power to make multitudes run. Even the moon's frightened of me, frightened to death. That's what he had to read to the Universal executives. And as soon as he did, they said, yeah, that's the guy we want. That's who it's going to be. Now, Universal was taking a risk. Claude Rains had never performed on a silver screen. He had been in a silent movie some time ago. No one remembered him, obviously. He was a brilliant theater actor. And if you've ever been on stage trying to perform, you have to overdo your voice and your looks and your actions to reach to the people in the back. And I was in community theater, just as I told Tracy, just for a short spell. And that's the best advice I had been given. Don't act to the people in the front row, act to the people in the back. So Wales believed I need that. Has to plus, he's muffled, the bandages, the robes, everything else. He has really got to inject fear with his voice and his mannerisms. And here's Universal, who put Claude Rains' name right out the front of the first title cards. Claude Rains in The Invisible Man. Well, most people had never heard of Claude Rains. Again, this is his first film ever at the age of 43. So they were taking a big risk of not marketing this film with someone like Lugosi or Karloff that they couldn't talk into.
So they really took a shot here. They promoted him as the star, even though he was not an established star.
Yeah.
And of course, it ended up paying off quite nicely. Remarkable story.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I'm curious. So Claude Rains, he gave a very powerful performance, being his debut performance, like you mentioned. What do you think made his performance so powerful, just given the fact that you don't see his face? Was it his voice? Do you believe that was the most powerful point, or was it something else?
It was a good question, Tracy. It was a combination of his voice that Whale heard and wanted, and his acting mannerisms. When you look at him with his fist like Mussolini, that's where he got that from. I mean, he was a small man. He was only 5'7".
Really?
But he had the ability to act as if he was a much larger person. So he had to put terror into the audiences and of the characters around him based on that voice and based on his mannerisms, his motions, his physical presence. So it was a combination of both.
Oh, wow. As I looked through your book and read some of the passages here, just the pictures that you have of Claude Rains and James Whale, absolutely beautiful, just beautiful. Because I don't think I've actually seen those people close up. Those photographs are just gorgeous. And you also had a lovely photograph of Gloria Stewart, the actress that played Flora. And is it true that she didn't really appreciate working with Claude Rains?
Well, she was, a much younger actress and still in her teens. And of course, for those watching who haven't seen The Invisible Man yet, Gloria Stewart played the old woman in the film Titanic. She was the old woman who, with the necklace, and gave the story of the account of what had happened. That was Gloria Stewart. She came out of retirement for that film.
I had no idea. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, she didn't really give any sway one way or another whether she cared for him or not.
Mm.
She wasn't in the film with him a lot during that powerful scene when he gives a speech. Absolutely.
Mhm.
There had been times that Gloria was a bit taken back because Rains was such a powerful actor. She was kind of diminished, and Whale had to go up and kind of pull in on the, no pun intended, the reins on Rains and say, she's here too. Give her some time and give some camera time. But she really worked well with James Whale. She really did like Whale as well.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. And my next question was, when you were doing research for your book, did you come across any myths or misconceptions about the movie that you were able to clarify through all of your research?
Hmm. Not so much. I think that for me, let's take a step back. This is one of the most, I think, underrated and underappreciated film of the monster films. Not because we don't love it, because we don't like the characters, or that we love the special effects, the classic lines. It's the fact that it took so much to get it off the ground and get it into production, as we said, 2 years and a month. So I think some of the misconception may come around the fact that it was just such a, they went right into production and there weren't any problems, prior to. Again, they went through 12 screenplays. And when they secured the rights from H.G. Wells, they promised him. In fact, Carl Laemmle Sr. himself visited Wells in London to get the rights.
Mhm.
And he told Wells, "I promise you, you will have final approval on the script," because this was his book,
Right.
and which he did. The prior 11 screenplays went way off the rails, not even close to Wells' book. They had invisible rats, they had an invisible octopus, they had an invisible Russian going after his political enemies, and when they gave it to R.C. Sheriff, who had penned Journey's End for James Whale. And in fact, it was Whale who recommended R.C. Sheriff to Universal. He went out and bought a book. He had never read it. And he read the book and he said, "This is good enough. Let's not change it. Add a few things, take away a few things. But let's stick with the original concept of the book." So I think some of the misconception may just be more misunderstanding of how the film was actually made and how long it took to make it.
Hmm. I gotta say, the invisible octopus, I mean, that sounds like one of those awful made for the Sci-Fi Channel movies.
Yeah. And think about it, when that script made it into Laemmle's Jr.'s lap, and he had to approve it, and Wells had to approve it. Well, either one or the other or both that didn't.
Yeah.
And Wells was getting pretty frustrated after nearly 2 years of that. So it was interesting that how that worked out. But why they just didn't, because it's a beautiful book, why they just didn't stick with the original concept of it is beyond me.
Yeah, I think Hollywood could learn a real lesson from that. Pay attention to what your author says. And although it's always very difficult to include everything from a book, because books tend to be detailed,
Yeah.
you have to condense into an hour and a half to 2 hours. But
Yeah.
follow the lead of your author. It makes sense, and they certainly sounded like they did that with Wells. So the invisible.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, go right ahead.
I'm just going to say there were a few things that Sheriff changed when it came to the book, and once you read it, you'll understand. But there are some key characters in the book and the film that was not in either one. in the book, Griffin is an albino. He was not just and a tall 6 foot, big, bulky guy. So he was not just with normal color hair and eyes. And Kemp is a tall, slender, attractive guy. There was no Flora. There was no love interest in the book at all. And the process of invisibility in the book was through a process of some serums and some equipment, almost like X-ray, that would slowly turn him. And it took quite a while in the book for Griffin to turn completely invisible. It seems like in the movie it was almost overnight, kind of with the injections.
Yeah.
The serum called monocaine was made up. There is no such thing. It wasn't in the book. That was made up by R.C. Sheriff.
Yeah.
People like Inspector Byrd, Inspector Lane, the chief of detectives, those are all made up by Sheriff. Was not in the book. And then the final scene, spoiler alert, when Griffin is discovered in the old barn and smoked out with a fire, and the way he is shot at the end was not the ending at all in The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man novel, he's surrounded by people who get a hold of him. He's invisible and beat the hell out of him. That's how he dies in the book. So there are quite a few differences that Sheriff took liberties for. But as you stated, Bruce, there's some things in even the best of novels that you just don't have the time or capacity to film. The film would be way too long.
Yeah. The essential story, though, is the same. And you have to change some things for the reasons you mentioned. You also maybe want to create a little variety. You don't want to just have a blueprint of the book. But the central theme is certainly intact here. Now, the Invisible Man is the most violent of the Universal monsters, compiling a kill count of over 100. Now, granted, many of those are in a train accident, and we don't really see anything like that graphically, but still, over 100 victims.
There were 122 kill counts. I mean, The Invisible Man from 1933, just that film alone.
Mm-hmm.
He is the most homicidal of the creatures. Dracula didn't kill that many, nowhere near. A handful. Yeah. The Frankenstein monster, little Maria and the doctor, the Wolfman, just really a handful. The Mummy, but The Invisible Man, 122 kill counts. So the first was the police inspector Byrd that he strangled in the Lion's Head pub. And then, according to the chief detective on camera, in the film, on screen, 20 members of the search party, when they went looking through the countryside to try to find the Invisible Man, he had killed 20 members of that search party. Mm. And then, of course, he had killed 100 people in the passenger train that he, again, spoiler alert, derailed through his invisibility. And then at the end, he killed Kemp.
Yeah.
And I always felt kind of sorry for Kemp. I mean, he was a cad. He was after Flora and that. But I mean, did he really deserve death? But then you think to yourself, the jealousy of Griffin, he's going insane. And he just couldn't stand Kemp at the end and knew what kind of a cat he was and then killed him at the end. But again, 122.
I'm curious, how did the audiences and critics of the day react to that level of violence in a film?
There really isn't any information on how they reacted. I mean, it was a financial success. It was a critical success. The critics loved it. The audiences loved it. And you really hadn't seen in the past, again, that many people being killed by one person. If there was war films and that, but not a monster movie. In fact, even today, some of the most famous horror creatures or monsters or entities in today's films aren't killing that many. So there really wasn't a big reaction as far as the violence goes. I've never come across anything like that.
Interesting. Now, in your book on the Bride of Frankenstein, you discuss James Whale's battle with the Hays Code,
Mm-hmm.
specifically a man named Joseph Breen. He was really the leading censor of the era.
Mm-hmm.
Did Whale face similar battles with censorship during the production of The Invisible Man? It's a little bit earlier. It's 1933, not 1935. But were there censorship concerns he had to overcome?
Uh, Good point. There wasn't. If there was, it was very minor. It wasn't worth mentioning in any research I've found. Of course, Bride of Frankenstein had hints of homosexuality, of atheism. Uh, Not so in The Invisible Man. He was just a lunatic that went on a killing spree. But yeah, I'm not sure if you would consider 1933 as being pre-code, because the code had been around since about 30, but wasn't really enforced until after 33, and that's when Whale had to deal with Breen. So he wasn't, Whale was directing this film as he always did, as a serious director, but it wasn't trying to implicate any kind of themes into it at all. So again, if there was any pushback from anyone, I couldn't find anything in my research. Good question, though.
I'm curious. Do you have a favorite scene in the movie?
I do. My favorite scene is at the very beginning. You see the winter scene outside of the city of Iping. He's struggling through the snow, and he opens the door, and everyone gets quiet. And he opens that door, and he looks almost like an owl the way his head turns. It's very eerie. And of course, with the bandages on his face, he's got the coat and the glasses. It's almost like when the Frankenstein monster is first introduced. You got Karloff backing up into the laboratory and then turns around, and the camera just focuses on him with his eyes up into his head. The Phantom of the Opera ripping the mask off. That's it's that kind of a scene and sensation. So that whole scene, I think why it's one of my favorites is because it was done without any sound. There was no screaming. There was just a bandaged face and goggles. But Whale and Arthur Edison, who was a cinematographer, just did an excellent job of presenting that, and just like he did with the Frankenstein monster.
Oh, wow. That is a great scene. The whole sense of awe when he walked in and everybody in the little tavern just kind of like stopped and stared. And
Yeah.
of course, chaos broke out shortly after that, but that was really cool. um, so I found the movie like quite visually beautiful, very stunning. I am still really curious about how they managed to accomplish some of those special effects of
Mhm.
his invisibility and
Mhm.
how they filmed it, because it was filmed back in, the early 30s. Do you have any insight on to some of the camera tricks or the special
Absolutely.
effects they did?
And it's all very, detailed in the book. First of all, it took about 2 months to film, and then after principal filming was done, it took about 2 months of special effects to finish it.
Hmm.
There are 111 special effects in this film, more than any other prior to. Anything from a glass moving across the bar counter from a hidden string or wire to what's called the Williams process, which is what made Claude Rains invisible.
Hmm.
And this is a great question, because let's consider what Claude Rains had to go through in this film. Not only is he covered up in bandages and, very difficult to see with the goggles and the other side glasses he had, heavy coat on him, or the heavy robe, and very difficult to talk. But during the scenes when he was going to be invisible and taking the wrappings off, where he's running around in the white shirt, he actually had uh, uh, a suit of type, a black, non-reflective, they call it black velvet, head covering, gloves, body, suit on him. So he's sweating inside of this, and they had to run a tube to get the flow of oxygen to him. He did pass out at least once during the filming because he wasn't getting any oxygen. So imagine having that headpiece on you and then having it wrapped in bandages, and then he takes it off. So the process, in order to make him look invisible, is called the Williams process. And the Williams process was developed by a gentleman, and I have his name here, John Fulton. John P. Fulton was the director of special effects of the film. Brilliant guy. And he had worked with Frank Williams, who developed the Williams process years earlier. But Fulton took it to the next level. And basically, what they first did was like a 7-step thing. I'll go through it very quickly. But they took a stationary shot. Let's imagine a time when Rains is in his clothes. He's already got the bandages off. He's just got his clothes on. Mm-hmm. The police officer and the men are in the room watching him through this whole scene. First, he took a stationary shot of the guest room, was filmed without Rains in it.
Okay.
Several minutes. So they had that. And then they went back and built a backdrop with that same black, non-reflective material. And then they dressed him from head to foot in that black material and then put the clothes on. And the headpiece was actually fashioned special for him by Jack Pierce, who had taken casts of his head. And that's how they had created that. And then Whale would call action, and Rains would proceed to move about the suit and the coat. He wasn't talking. They would dub the voice afterwards. And then that was recorded on high contrast film. From that, they made a matte, and then they made an opposite negative of that, so that his clothes was black, and then his outline was white. And then they made a negative of that, and they called that a cover mat. They had a holdout mat, then they had a cover mat. Mm-hmm. It's a series of mats of turning things inside out, putting the film on top of film, and eventually blacking out where you would have seen Rains, and having that filled in with the background of the room he found. Very complicated. I'm sure I've lost people by now. It was really detailed in the book, the step-by-step process of when it happens.
Oh, and my gosh.
It's just a fascinating, and again, it took 2 months to do that. They also had to go through 63,000 frames to remove some of the gaffes. Some of the, there's a wire. I can see a wire. Let's stop that frame. Let's use some sepia remover or whatever to get rid of that. And they went through 63,000 frames just to make sure the film was perfect.
Oh my gosh. I find that so fascinating. Just given the time period, so early in like the film industry, and you think about what they do today, it really totally blows my mind. I find it so CGI, incredible.
I mean, yeah, just a lot of great simple effects. When you see the one about the bike going down the street with him supposedly riding, they had a boom above, and that's all in the book as well. And they had a track in the road, and the bike would go along the track, and the boom would pull it along with invisible wires that you couldn't see. It really was ingenious how they did some of these things back then.
Oh my gosh, just the sheer talent. I have so much respect for the talent from back in those days. It's incredible. Now, the Invisible Man, you guys kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier. He kind of stands apart from most of the Universal monsters, like Frankenstein and Dracula. What do you think makes him so unique in that lineup?
You know, that's a great question, and I'm not sure I have the answer to that. I think everyone may have different answers. I don't even think Universal did. And we touched a little bit on this on the last podcast, but He was different than the other monsters, not just because of the kill count, but you look at the sequels. Now, this film was very successful. They could have done something, right? Brought him back to life. Look how many times Larry Talbot's been brought back to life for the sequels, for no explanation, or Dracula, or the Frankenstein monster. So they could have done something, but it took them until 1940 to have an Invisible Man sequel. So he was treated different than the other ones. The Mummy, right away, they had sequels. Bride of Frankenstein was just 3.5 years after. The Wolfman was 2 years after. With Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. So he was treated differently by Universal, and I'm not sure why. And even, it's not just Universal, it's treated the Invisible Man different. The Aurora monster kits in the 1960s never had an Invisible Man kit. They had Frankenstein monster, they had Dracula, the Wolfman, the Witch, the Forgotten Prisoner at Castle Mere. They had, Jekyll and Hyde, the Phantom. They had everyone. They never made an Invisible Man kit. Now, modern days they have now, but going into the 1970s, Aurora never made it. And think about this: Famous Monsters of Filmland never had a cover featuring Jack Griffin on it, the Invisible Man, until another company took over. And this is an issue of year 2000, May to July 2000. He finally got on the cover of Famous Monsters of Movieland, or Filmland. But prior to the days of Forrest Ackerman, he was never on it. So everyone's kind of treated this poor guy differently. Maybe I think it's the kill count. They're scared to death of him. They don't. I don't know. You tell me.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Oh, cool. Thank you.
Another thing that comes to mind, Chris, is the fact that with the Invisible Man, we don't know what he looks like.
Right.
We only know what he looks like when he's wrapped in bandages and glasses, and that's a disguise, essentially. And it's a fearsome disguise, but it doesn't give you the true essence. With Dracula, Frankenstein, these other monsters, we don't really have to use our imagination. It's fully presented to us. With the Invisible Man, we do have to use our imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Is that part of it too, you think?
I think so. I mean, between Jack Pierce and Vera West, who was the head of costumes for Universal, I think they did a fantastic job of creating an entity out of bandages. It's almost like that's him. That's his face, the bandages, the goggles, the fake hair, and even the fake pink nose. And it's funny, just as Lon Chaney was a realist in his makeup, he went back to the novels of the Hunchback, the Phantom, the Opera. And if you read the descriptions of those characters, that's what Lon Chaney made on screen, like a living skull, which was in the Gothic novel for the Phantom. And Pierce also was a researcher. When he did the makeup for Frankenstein, he researched what happens to corpses. His fingers are blackened because with shoe polish, because a dead body, the blood will flow to the fingers and coagulate. He did so much research on what would actually happen. How would Frankenstein have opened his skull? Because he wasn't a surgeon; he was a scientist. All of this, these facts that went into it. The same when he did the Mummy. He researched the mummies and which one looked more like Karloff. He went to the library to do his homework and how to duplicate the wrappings. So Pierce actually went and got his own copy of The Invisible Man. And if you read the description of The Invisible Man, his appearance is exactly in Wells' book as we see on the screen. Between him and Vera West to create this entity out of bandages and goggles and in an outfit, I mean, it's just phenomenal.
If we look at the Universal monsters of the 1930s and 40s, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, which came the latest. In terms of popularity, where do you think the Invisible Man ranks among those Universal monsters with fans in general?
Some people it's a preference. Some people it's his favorite, but obviously Dracula, Frankenstein, and Wolfman are probably 1, 2, 3 with most, I would think. And I'm not sure if that led into the decision by Universal not to do sequels right away. And even when they did, none of these people were any relation to Griffin, or even any mention of him. So I think he's again kind of been the step-headed wretch, or the bread-headed stepchild. That's what it is of the Universal monsters. Again, some people he's number 1 for them. I think for most he's probably number 4. But then do we include the Phantom and the Hunchback in that, because they're not really part of the golden age of the Universal monsters? You'd have to go back a few more years.
In the book, you separate those
those
silent era monsters from the 30s, 40s, really the 50s too, because that's when The Creature came out. And you do make that point in the book. And I think that's a valid point. I think to separate silent era from talking pictures is legitimate.
Yep. And especially when you consider, though, that Karloff didn't speak in Frankenstein, and when they asked him to in Bride of Frankenstein, he thought it was silly. Plus, he had to remove that bridge out of his mouth, so he didn't have that sunken corpse look on screen as he did in the original one. But look at the job that Claude Rains did in just moving and just his looks and his mannerisms without even talking. What Karloff did with the monster. So really, they were almost silent screen type as the Phantom was at that point. But yeah, there was a separation. There's 5 or 6 years between Dracula and the Phantom being released. Dracula being, of course, the first talkie horror movie. But yeah, some people include those 2 Lon Chaney characters when they talk about the Universal monsters, and some don't, because he's not really in the golden age of horror.
Yeah.
Mm. Oh, that's interesting. When you were doing research for your book, did you come across any photographs or letters, production notes that nobody had ever found before?
I'm not sure if anyone hadn't seen them before, but I do have. I did come across, and it is in the book, the original screenplay by R.C. Sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is available online. A lot of the stuff is available. I have access to databases, to old magazines, newspapers. This is where I get a lot of my information from.
Mm-hmm.
And the screenplay is available. And if you pull it up and you look at it, you see little notes written by Carl Laemmle Jr. He's reading through this thing. He hasn't changed it much, which is amazing. Sheriff was a very gifted writer. So Laemmle didn't really change many things, but he would say, okay, he's going to disappear in this. Well, how are we going to do that? Or this thing lifts by itself in a move. How is that going to happen? So he put little notes in there, probably not for Sheriff, but probably for Fulton to read afterwards, who had to come up with imagination of how to make this stuff happen. In fact, Sheriff was not aware of Fulton's ability of the Williams process. So a lot of the stuff, he was just kind of, okay, this is what Griffin does, and kind of in parentheses, you figure out how to do it, type of thing.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's so cool. So what has the response been to your book so far from readers? Have you had anybody reach out and chat with you about your book? Or have you had any, say, family members of some of the actors or the production crew? Have they made contact with you to chat about some of the stories?
No, they haven't.
Really?
I would assume, I don't know if there's any family members left of Claude Rains, grandchildren. I'm not sure, but they haven't. The feedback's been very good. Now,
Mm-hmm.
my biggest, and we talked about this in the last podcast, I'm kind of late as a writer getting into this. So I've got 40 books out there on Amazon, a lot about Michigan history, where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
I write the books that I and others would like to read. but we can't because they don't yet exist. There was no biography, in-depth biography on Jack Pierce, which I couldn't believe. So I researched it, wrote it. Bride of Frankenstein, no in-depth book solely on that publication. The same with The Invisible Man. It's like, you got to be kidding me. And then the other one that Bruce wanted to mention a little bit, the Wolfman, 1941. No one's ever written an in-depth book, concept, pre-production, production, post-production on this 1941 classic. There's a great book out there called Cheney's Baby. Gives a lot of insight into that, but it's not solely dedicated, going through each scene by scene analysis of that film. So I'm gotten kind of late into this. Retired last year, so I have a lot more time to do it. But I've had a lot of great feedback on The Invisible Man, as well as The Bride of Frankenstein and the Jack Pierce book. Jack Pierce and Bride of Frankenstein are battling number 1, number 2, my bestsellers of all time for my books that I've published. So.
Oh, nice. And you do, even in this book, you have a really nice piece about Jack Pierce in this book too, which was pretty cool to read. So, awesome. It's definitely lovely. And I will keep reading it. It's beautiful.
Well, thank
you.
Chris, it's absolutely shameful. You've only done 40 books. You've only done 5 books on the horror genre. What are you waiting for? Huh? Get going here. Come on.
Yeah, I know. I've been a little busy the last few months. Not put a downer on it, but my wife and I were in a pretty bad, serious auto accident back in March. And which kind of gave me I needed something to focus on.
Yeah.
Which is why I finished The Invisible Man and got that out in May, I believe, April or May. But I am getting back into it. Again, The Wolfman is the next one coming up. I keep thinking, well, I'm going to write a book on this. No, someone must have done it. Someone had to have written a book on it. And then lo and behold, no. So that's the motivation.
Well, you're the first person I've ever heard who has written 40 books and apologized for not writing enough. So let's talk a little bit.
I got more up here coming.
Yeah, I know. You do.
Bruce, my life story.
Yeah. That will be your first flop. Let's talk, Chris, about the aftermath of The Invisible Man. You mentioned that there were 4 sequels that were done, often involving characters not related to the original Jack Griffin.
Yep.
You then have kind of a decision to ignore The Invisible Man in the Monster Rally films of the 1940s. Other than Vincent Price, his voice being heard at the end of the wonderful movie Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
And Price, of course, says, "I'm the Invisible Man." Other than that, and that's just very brief at the end of that film, the Invisible Man not involved in any of those Monster Rally movies. Is it because this is still an underrated film, or maybe they didn't think the Invisible Man could interact with these other monsters? Any thoughts on that?
A couple. I mean, the Mummy wasn't either. You think about it, and the Mummy had 4 sequels. The last 3 with Lon Chaney Jr. He was never in any interactive monster rallies. Bride of Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. There was an Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man, separate movie.
Yeah.
And Costello Meet the Mummy, a separate movie, but they were never interjected again until the very end, as you said, when Chick and Wilbur are rolling away. That's the last we've seen of all those monsters. And then, I was hoping to get in on the fun. Let me introduce myself, the Invisible Man. You see his cigarette lit up, and it's the voice of Vincent Price, who would star in the next sequel. I would have to think that some of it, though, is based on the expense. We've covered what it took to make the Invisible Man invisible, and him running around in his pants down the road and in his shirt and take the wrappings off. So I think maybe the expense of the special effects alone, considering you've got to do all this makeup on the three monsters. You've got to pay three monsters. Maybe it was just the expense alone that was just too much for them to consider it.
Of all the sequels, follow-ups, remakes that have been done, and they're continuing to be done into the modern era.
Yeah.
What is your absolute favorite?
I like the Invisible Man, the remake from Universal 2020. I thought that was nothing like the Wells book. Obviously, the same kind of themes of isolation, of power, being unseen. So I think that was my favorite of the ones done recently. It was the bodysuit that made it look like invisible. I thought that was pretty interesting. I would love to see a remake though of the 33 classic of the one based on the Wells book, done where maybe it's in Gothic times more, and he's discovered this serum that does cause him to go insane. But I thought the one in 2020 was pretty good.
I agree with you completely. I think it's a great film. It's a modern day classic. Elizabeth Moss, the girlfriend to the Invisible Man, is really the central figure. She's phenomenal in the role, and that adds a whole new dynamic. You mentioned the bodysuit, which is used for invisibility. So he doesn't have to be in a situation where all his clothes are off to be unseen.
Right.
Put the bodysuit over what he's wearing. There's a phenomenal scene where she is having dinner with her sister, and then the knife appears out of nowhere. I think it's an absolutely tremendous film, just absolutely terrific, like 4.5 stars. So I agree with you completely on that one.
And it's the thought of there's someone in the house. How many times have we had that? You're alone in the house, and you think, did I hear something? What is there someone behind me?
Right.
And when you think about it, that's happening today. Online, you could have someone from East Europe get online, get in your computer, the privacy in your own home, steal information, steal bank account, whatever it is, and get out, and you don't even know they're there. So this whole bit about invisibility and the thrill and the scare of some entity that you can't see exists with us all now so much more with the online scams.
Tracy, you saw the one with Elizabeth Moss, right?
Yeah. I don't actually know if I don't think I saw that one though, Bruce. I just wrote that down, so I'm going to watch it tonight.
Oh, it's great.
I would recommend it.
It's great. It really is. Wow. Well, Chris, we have one final question for you, and you gave us a little bit of a hint about what's coming up next, and you're working on your in-depth book on the early 1940s classic, The Wolfman, with Lon Chaney Jr. How far along have you progressed, and when do you anticipate that one's going to come out?
So I'm finishing up a lot of my research, again, getting old databases, newspapers, periodicals, checking all the facts that are out there in Wikipedia, which you can't always trust, or IMDb. A lot of that stuff you have to take with a grain of salt. The biggest thing I found a discrepancy is some claim that when Lon Chaney died, they kept Chaney Jr. out of his will. And Lon Chaney did not want his son to be in acting. That's not all necessarily accurate at all. And I think, in fact, when Chaney died in 1930 and left his son quite a bit of money, almost to the tune of $1 million to today, it probably kind of reinforces his plans to become an actor. And now that he had the financial ability to do so, quit his job he was in when he worked for he was in sales and managing for a water heating company. His wife's father was president there, so he got out of it. And it wasn't that Chaney Sr. didn't want him going to acting. Obviously, it's a tough business. He just didn't want both of them together at the same time. One family member's enough. But I'm about a third of the way through. just, I'm no expert on the film. I love it. It's my favorite. The Wolfman has always been my favorite when I was a kid. And I have found out so much information just in doing my research. That's really made it interesting. I hope to have it done by the end of the year in time for Christmas. But my real goal is early 2026 in celebration of its 85th anniversary.
I'm curious if you've spoken with Lon Chaney Jr.'s grandson, Ron Chaney.
I did not.
No?
No.
All right.
No. Did he mention me to you?
Email.
Hey, I don't want to write this book.
Yeah.
No, I love the fact though that his grandson Ron is very much a lot of this, just like Sarah Karloff and Bela Lugosi Jr. very much into these and loves to share information about their relatives who are in these movies. So I'm glad that he's actually involved with a lot of that. But no, I have not had the honor to talk to him.
Yeah. I was going to ask you your favorite of the Universal monsters. So it is the Wolfman.
Yeah, it's always been the Wolfman. I have a picture, which I'll include it in the book, of me as a kid with the Wolfman and in just a silly outfit. And I was always, Jack Pierce inspired me when I was a kid to go into to develop theatrical makeup as well. And about nearly every Halloween, even going into my early 20s and 30s, I was a werewolf with all the makeup and everything, not just the mask.
Yeah.
I went into, painstaking detail. So I don't know why. It was, I like dogs. I'm a canine guy. I don't know. But I've always preferred the Wolfman over the others. Maybe because I feel sorry for him. He didn't ask to be the way he is. Larry Talbot. So
yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, in some ways, he's the most innocent of all these monsters. Well,
Maybe it's the hair. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing that book in 2026. You hope to be done with it by the end of this year in terms of the writing process.
Mm-hmm.
We, of course, have been talking about this year's book. It came out in April of 2025, The Invisible Man, The Complete History of the 1933 Horror Classic. Obviously, Christopher, it's available at Amazon. Anywhere else people can purchase it?
No, Amazon is the only one. If you look up my name, Christopher Locke, L-O-C-K, or type in The Invisible Man, Christopher Locke on Amazon, it will lead you to my author page on Amazon, and where you can scroll down and look at the other books I've read. But right now, it's only on Amazon.
And again, that's spelling Locke, L-O-C-K, Christopher Locke, author of this terrific book. Very in-depth, The Complete History of the 1933 Horror Classic, The Invisible Man, nearly 440 pages, wonderfully reproduced photos, as Tracy mentioned earlier. It's really a terrific book. It's obvious your passion for this book comes across on those pages. Christopher, we thank you just like we did the first time. This was great. We look forward to hearing from you again when the Wolfman book comes to fruition.
You guys will get an autographed copy. Trust me.
Oh, that would be nice.
Thank you again, Bill, so much, both of you, for having me back. It's been very enjoyable. If we don't talk, you guys stay safe. Happy holidays, and thank you again.
Yeah, we'll have to limit the number of interviews you do because you say you've got 2/3 of this book project to go. So time to crack down, right?
Right.
Our thanks to Christopher Locke, the author of this wonderful book on The Invisible Man. My thanks also to Tracy Asteria, co-host and producer of the program. We thank all of you for joining us in this Museum of the Macabre. And we do hope we'll see you again next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.